Kia ora, I'm Ian Harvey, founder of Collective Intelligence, and this is Stuff That Matters Now. Now, my hoki mai, today I get to talk to Benedict Perez about his journey, being born into middle-class family in the Philippines, his journey from there to London, across the world, New York, being in the Wall Street scene for a long time, how that affected him, almost killed him, and then his journey from there to the Edmund Hillary Fellowship. This is going to be an adventure for me. BeeWee, as he is fondly known, is a very, very open guy and a wonderful communicator, so I'm intrigued to see where we end up going. Enjoy, peeps. Enjoy. Kia ora everybody, welcome back. This afternoon I am in Auckland somewhere, and I have got the great pleasure of talking to a good mate, someone I met through the Edmund Hillary Fellowship, called Benedict Perez, but lovingly called BeeWee. Good afternoon, BeeWee.
Good afternoon, Harv.
And BeeWee's feeling a bit nervous this afternoon.
I think just being normally nervous.
Normally nervous. And look, I'm dying to talk to you, BeeWee. I have been for a little while. Thank you for agreeing to this. We have met through the Edmund Hillary Fellowship, of which you are a fellow, and from New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm fascinated in your journey, so we're going to dig into that first. So, BeeWee, how would you describe yourself as a person? Who's BeeWee?
BeeWee is a perpetual optimist, always smiling. In the past, probably hiding certain things with my positive facade, but now have realized that now I can be myself.
And how long have you been on that journey or realization?
I would say the past 4 years.
And so, BeeWee, you were born where?
I was born in the Philippines, and in a city called Quezon City, which is part of Metro Manila.
Which is, describe that to us.
It's a typical third world capital, densely populated, and the discrepancy of like the rich and the poor is immense. And so you will see people in extremely expensive cars, but people also just walking with their kids, with their babies, naked.
And so that's what you were born into, BeeWee. And so how do you go from that? So tell us about your family back in the Philippines.
So I come from a big family. I'm being raised Catholic. 5 kids. I'm the middle child, older brother, sister, me, then 2 younger brothers. We were in a middle class family. My parents were from the provinces in the Philippines, but were fortunate enough that after World War II, they were granted scholarships to the United States because of what they were doing to help the Allied forces growing up. Believe it or not, my dad was about 16, 17, and he had to learn Japanese, and he would go up coconut trees and hide so that when he could hear the Japanese troops pass by, he could just listen to what they were saying, and then when they leave, run down and go back to the Americans and say, this is what I overheard the Japanese say. And from that act of bravery, he was granted a scholarship in the United States.
I can't believe what it would take to be that brave, BeeWee, because it would have been a very swift end if the Japanese had found that out.
Completely.
Yeah. So, scholarship for education.
Yeah, so he was granted a scholarship at the Kings Point. It's one of the military academies, highly rated in the United States. Kings Point is based in just Great Neck, just outside of New York. But more importantly, because he was part of the Merchant Marine Academy of the U.S. forces, he was able to travel all over the world on a merchant ship. So at a very young age, this poor Filipino from the province was able to see the world at the age of like 18 to 21, because half of the time they were in school on a ship.
And so, but he came back to the Philippines.
He came back to the Philippines, still decided to stick to the military. Ended up being a lieutenant commander for the Philippine Navy, but realized that he couldn't. But I think at that time, my older brother and sister were already born, and he started thinking, I need to do something more substantial financially to be able to support my family. And we ended up being a family of 5 kids, and we were all being driven around by my dad on a very old Volkswagen Beetle.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine 5 kids and 2 adults. So we would be 7 in a small Volkswagen Beetle.
And the Volkswagen Beetle, you had that little boot at the back. You'd be able to put some of your kids tucked in there.
The 2 younger brothers were stuck in the boot at the back.
Yes.
Like that is the only way we could fit everyone.
Yeah. I've travelled on a Beetle a long time ago, and the boots were quite unique. With those stunning.
Yeah, that was our typical road trip.
Yeah,
the 2 kids fighting in the back.
And BeeWee, I've met some of your family. What strikes me is this incredible drive to succeed and to get on in life. Was that instilled from your parents?
Definitely. My dad was in the military. He was definitely more of a disciplinarian, and he instilled in us discipline. We had to be good in sports. We had to be balanced, not just with academics, but also in sports. My mother was more of the EQ person. I would say that my dad was working too hard to support a family of 5 kids, that we were practically raised by my mom.
Right.
My mom talk about someone who went through a transformational life. When we were kids, we would hear her screaming, and was perpetually drunk, and was a nervous wreck. And she tells us afterwards that she was an alcoholic, but she went through a transformation. Ended up getting into yoga and meditation in the 70s. That was quite early for someone in the Philippines to be getting into an alternative lifestyle. Funny enough, my dad from the military, I thought would be very resistant to this kind of alternative lifestyle. But after my mom went to Findhorn, Scotland, and lived in a commune for a few months, she came back completely different person. Stopped drinking, became vegan, and I think practically influenced my dad that if I could transform myself, let's come join me in my journey. And my dad and my mom ended up being very avid yogi. They spent maybe 2 weeks a year going to a place called Mount Abu in northern India. So they became what you call Raja Yogi.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hardcore, Harv. Obviously no meat, no cheese, no dairy products, not even honey. Listen to this, no sex.
I don't like the sound of this, BeeWee.
Yeah, I mean, they were celibate, and they would be proud about talking about their celibacy. They won't eat the onions and garlic because that might heighten their libido. And they would come, and there were no podcasts then, but they would come TV shows and talk about their alternative lifestyle. It was kind of embarrassing for the kids to be hearing it from our classmates that, oh my gosh, your parents are hippies. But it was my mom who definitely influenced us to become really focused on having a purposeful life.
BeeWee, that is out there for that time. For that time. So how old were you when your parents going through that?
I was about 12. And what happened was, because they were strict vegetarians and having five carnivores in the family, they actually moved out of the house. They left the house to the kids to manage, and the parents moved out and stayed in a condominium. So typically, what you would do oppositely.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So what happened was, so my parents moved out. They decided that they cannot be living with people who were eating meat because they had their own separate cutlery and silverware. And from there, we had to learn how to manage a household. And every Sunday after church service, we would all meet for a family meeting, and we held it like a corporate annual weekly meeting. And we would all go through our achievements for the week, where we need help, where we need support, and from there, my parents would give us advice and ask, like basically a consensus on from the other siblings on how we can help one of our siblings' issues. So at a very young age, we were already starting to learn about this thing called collective intelligence.
BeeWee, your parents were Catholic. How did the Catholic Church respond to their hippie ways?
So believe it or not, in 1521, a Portuguese sailor by the name of Ferdinand Magellan was looking for the Spice Islands, and thought it was going to be somewhere closer to Aotearoa. But the waves brought his ships to the Philippines, and from there he planted a cross, and the next group of ships came and were all missionaries. So in a way, the best way to describe the Philippines was it was in a nunnery for 350 years. Then the Americans took over, and like a Hollywood, and so that's why we have a very unique culture. If I don't know whether you've met Filipinos here in Auckland or in Aotearoa, but we're a very happy culture. From what I gather, Catholic schools are still dominated by Filipinos, and in general, still very close family knit, and we have Spanish names but with Chinese faces. So my real name is Benedicto Wilfredo Perez y Santiago, but because Filipinos are given nicknames at birth, Benedicto Wilfredo was shortened to BeeWee. That's how I got my nickname.
And BeeWee, the question, I'm going to go back to the question, because I'm fascinated in this. So your parents were Catholic, but they adopted this alternate life. I'm using alternate very broadly. They adopted this different lifestyle. Was the Catholic Church okay with that? How did they reconcile that?
So the way they reconciled it was exactly what I mentioned. We would go to service every Sunday. Still, I don't know whether they did it for us kids, it's just to have like a discipline of like a religion, because I would normally see my parents asleep during the sermon, and so. But we were brought up, even though they had this belief in Raja Yoga. We were in church every Sunday. I was an altar boy. My younger brother was also an altar boy. And to be honest with you, my first real ambition was to become a Jesuit priest at the age of 16. I've come a long way from thinking about being a priest.
I was going to say and we'll get to that. We'll get to that soon. So, I mean, I knew this was going to be a fascinating conversation. So, BeeWee, how then do you go from that village to New York?
Okay. Just as my parents instilled in us, the world is your oyster. It's so similar to the Maori culture. Like you have your pepeha, The Philippines is our where we were born, but the way our parents brought us up was you have your whole life to explore this planet. So the only way you can do it is through education, because through education you'll be able to be given a broader audience to do your God-given talents, to fulfill your dreams. So that's basically what happened. My elder brother was the first to leave the Philippines on, I think, on a $1,000 allowance. Moved to the U.S. Was an intern for a bank in Pittsburgh. Got a scholarship to go to the Wharton School of Business, where the ex-American president went to school as well. And from there, became the youngest managing partner for investment bank Lazard, and became the Secretary of Energy for the Philippine government. And now his company, which is focused on wind power, is going to go public on March 24. My brother was followed by my sister, who ended up getting a traineeship in Copenhagen, Denmark. And but she went she ended up being evangelized. So she ended up being a born again Christian, and was very committed to that community. Ended up marrying a born again Christian. Were missionaries in Hawaii, Osaka, and I forgot that one South American country. But now they live in San Diego. So that was the pattern, and I saw my brother doing well in the U.S. My sister living a purposeful life. I said I need to leave the country as well, and the only thing I could do was really. So one thing about me, Harv, is like you won't believe this. My first job after university was a guidance counselor for I guess that would be like 10th grade students, all boys school, and you can just imagine the amount of hormonal issues they were going through.
Yep.
And they would come in, and I was not your typical guidance counselor. I had my music on. I had, and they could easily talk about their issues at home, and that's how I ended up enjoying just mentoring people, and that's still what I'm doing to this very day.
BeeWee, did you do well at school?
No.
No.
No. I was probably what you call a B student.
For me that's good, but
but on my grade, my 12th grade, or my graduating year, I said I gotta shape up if I'm gonna get into a good school. I was more into athletics. I was really into tennis. I was a varsity tennis player, and was into music. But I rallied hard. In my last year, I think I was an straight A student in my last year, and eventually was ranked 12th out of like 150 in our class, which helped me get into a proper private school in the Philippines, university.
Yep.
But
and you studied what?
I ended up taking two degrees, Harv. First was psychology. That was influenced by my mom. I forgot to mention that she was also a psychologist, applied psychologist, and I guess that's probably why she got in. She was more open about new ideas and new ways of living. And the second one was management, and in a way that was my way of like appeasing my parents. My dad was a businessman. My mom was a psychologist. I said, why not take 2 degrees? So I ended up taking 5 years to finish 2 degrees university. I was not an A student, but I was very active with extracurricular activities. I ended up being the president of the organization called ISEC, which is International Association of Economic and Business Students, which is a worldwide traineeship program. And that's how my brother got to the U.S. through a traineeship. And that's how my sister got her traineeship in Copenhagen. And so that was our pathway. I was the president of my university's chapter. And from there, I was asked to help out the chapter in Taipei. I forgot to mention that the school that we went to in high school was an all boys Jesuit school, but it was bilingual. It was run by Jesuits who were all expelled from mainland China in 1949. All Caucasians, but spoke perfect Mandarin. And they established an all boys prep school teaching English, Chinese, and Tagalog. So that helped. My parents had the foresight. This was like in the 80s, where they were telling us, one day you'll thank us for sending you to a school with Chinese as a extra language. One day China's gonna be a power, and we thought, oh my God, I don't know what they're smoking.
But
But I mean, looking back, that's just having that in my CV helped open doors for me, and that's how I got into Taipei. Spent a few months helping the local chapter of this organization, and went back to the Philippines. Got into a very difficult management training program for Philippine Airlines. These are things that a lot of people don't know about me. That I worked for the Philippine Airlines. We had a management training program, and I topped the program. I had the first pick where to go: London, San Francisco, Melbourne, or Hong Kong. And I said, London. So I ended up being the route manager for Philippine Airlines in London. And when you say route manager nowadays, I mean, what does it mean? In those days, Harv, they were all multi-legged flights. Philippine Airlines would fly Manila, Bangkok, Dubai, Rome, London. So we had to optimize which segments should be sold to certain agencies between Rome to Dubai, or Dubai to Bangkok, or is it Dubai to Manila, or London to Dubai? So all sorts of permutations. So I had to be really good in what you call what they call data science nowadays, but they were called I think operations research in those days. And from there, I applied to London Business School, and I just similarly with my brother, I said, you know what the heck, I'm gonna try and see whether I can get a scholarship. And the British Council had a particular scholarship called the Foreign and Commonwealth Office Scholarship. It's given to people from third world countries who can manifest that they're able to get into exclusive schools in the UK. And they paid 1 year of my 2 year tuition, boarding, travel expenses. So so from there, I ended up.
BeeWee, did you get homesick?
At that time, to be honest with you, I was actually dating a Filipina girl, and she noticed that I wasn't calling her as often as I used to. So I wasn't, and I was really enjoying just getting to know the world and exploring. Having working for an airline, I literally could write my own ticket on a Friday afternoon. Where should I go this weekend? There's something happening in Vienna. So I'll literally write my own ticket. Heathrow, Vienna on a Friday, and come back on a Sunday. And I did this for 2 years, and I was able to travel and explore the world. And that's when I decided, you know what, I think I'm going to be traveling all my life.
Because I've got to say, you've whenever I've talked to you, you have a very global view of things, right? You travel just about more than anybody else I know, and which is not saying a lot, but
Yeah.
you've got a very global view of the world.
That's, I guess, that slogan that my parents instilled in us: "The world is your oyster," just was stuck in the minds of all the kids, and that's how we see it, and that's why we're all into environmental issues and societal issues. The slogan of Edmund Hillary Fellowship was being a base camp for a better world. I'm sure we're going to be talking about it, but that's exactly what hit me when I read that slogan about the fellowship, creating a base camp for a better world.
Yep. So London, and then what?
And in London, I got a job in Hong Kong. So I said, okay, I can't stay in an airline. Airlines don't really pay. And after this MBA at London Business School, I felt I should, like everyone else in the late '80s, get into finance. So I said, how do I bring my experience in the airline into the finance world? And it clicked on me that maybe I should get into aircraft leasing. I had no clue about aircraft leasing, Harv, but I just applied to companies that were into aircraft leasing. And there was a boutique bank in Hong Kong that was partly owned by a British merchant bank, Kleinwood Benson, that was focused on aircraft leasing. I applied, and I remember I had three options: whether to take a job in Paris, a job in Singapore, and Hong Kong. And I decided to take the job in Hong Kong because it, I felt like it could. There was there was continuity in between from my airline route management experience to aircraft leasing, and maybe I could end up in a aviation consulting firm, and that's why I ended up moving to Hong Kong and taking this job. That was like, talk about like a boot camp. Um, the principals of the firm were all from big investment banks in the U.S. and in the U.K., and they worked us like slaves. I remember once summer vacation I was at in Tuscany with my girlfriend, who ended up becoming my wife, and we get a call saying you have to fly back immediately because we were doing a pitch to a big company by Monday. So we had to cut our trip short, flew back, got in early morning Sunday, went straight to the office, and no one is at the office. And I called all the partners and said, "Where's everyone?" I said, "Oh, we forgot to tell you the deal was postponed 2 weeks later." And I said, "I can't believe this. Like, I mean, how can they treat people like this?" But it taught me what kind of culture I do want to be in. I tell this to people that sometimes the best mentors are your tormentors. And I mean that boss of mine was at my wedding, and till this very day we still keep in touch. And I tease him as my mentor and tormentor.
Yes, and I've never heard that term before. That's very cool. Yeah. And so, BeeWee, and I'm really interested in your time in New York and working on Wall Street.
Yep.
Tell us about that.
So I was tired of this 90-hour weeks in Hong Kong, and I said I gotta look for another job. And I really wanted to move back to London because I felt comfortable having lived in London for 4 years. And a bank called Baring Securities said, why don't you fly to London and see whether we could hire someone like you? I flew to London, met the people in London, and they said, we're actually starting a Southeast Asian focused equity desk. And you being from the Philippines, you'll be more credible than us talking about Southeast Asia. But the job's in New York. And I said, oh my gosh, my US visa is in my old passport, hidden on my office desk. So I had to tell an office mate, you have to keep this a secret. You got to DHL my passport to Heathrow because I have an interview in New York the following Monday. So I had to literally wait for the DHL package to arrive in Heathrow Airport, took the passport, and flew to New York.
What do you mean the old passport?
Because so my visa for the U.S. was in an old passport.
Right.
So I couldn't enter the U.S. without that visa. So in a way, that was like even a miracle that I ended up making it to that interview in New York. I got in on a Monday, got offered a job literally the same week. to be part of the Southeast Asian equity desk for a British bank called Barings, and resigned from Hong Kong. So I said, "Wow, I'm excited." I mean, I was not really planning to be in New York, but that's probably better and probably less stressful than Hong Kong. I got a job in 1992. My girlfriend then was supposed to go to school in London, but she surprised me and she said, "Guess what? What? I bought a ticket." "Oh, yeah, to London, right?" "Nope, I'm flying with you to New York." "What do you mean?" "I've decided that I'm foregoing my studies to be with you." The funny part was I had so many friends who were already giving me list of like single women in New York when my girlfriend said that I'm going with you. So we actually flew together. In those days, corporates had corporate apartments for the big bosses for many different reasons. And actually ended up staying in a Trump-related building called the Trump Palace on our first weekend in New York. I said, "Wow, what a life!" We get into New York and we stay in what is considered like an exclusive place to stay, the Trump Palace. And from there, I started from scratch. Didn't know anything about equity sales, but I truly believe it's more my interpersonal skills that got me going. I truly would purposely try to listen and find out what are the pain points of this person, what keeps this person awake at night, and that's how I honed in on how I could help this person. So even without mentioning anything, I would literally find out what pain point this person has that I can help him or her with. And that's how I got very close to a lot of like large clients in the United States. And in 3 years' time, I was the youngest managing director for the company, and I was the biggest producer for Barings in the U.S. I think about 40% market share for Thai, Indonesian, and Philippine equities. I was what I thought was like a big swinging dick at the age of 29.
Right, right. I was just going to ask you how the ego was at that point.
At that point, it was part of the culture. You had to brag about your achievements as part of the culture in Wall Street. There's no such thing as a tall poppy in Wall Street. You got to be the tallest poppy to be noticed. And so everyone would brag about how good they are. And that was my problem initially, Harv, because even though I was the biggest producer, I wasn't paid commensurate to what I was producing. It was still run by an old boys network. So if you don't actually participate in college football or college basketball pools, and didn't know who's playing who in college, you were considered an outsider. And even though I was the biggest producer, I was still considered an outsider by the Americans.
BeeWee, did racism come into it at all?
You know what? I've never really felt it like others, and maybe because I was always positive, I was always engaging, and the most important thing is probably even my superiors who were mostly Caucasian felt that this guy will make me look good because he's producing, and we might not have to pay him exactly what he deserves, and who gets to get that extra bonus at the end of the year? Me, not him. So that's probably the racism that I would. It was very subtle, but I don't think I felt any racism till much later on in New York.
Interesting. And so,
But we lived large. It was like Um, uh, it was the go-go days in Wall Street. There were, we would take clients to the most irreputable places that you can imagine, and it would be paid for by the bank. Um, we would, clients would ask us like, if you want me to give you business, I want a dozen red roses every Monday morning delivered to my office, and we would not even, think twice. Sometimes we would send them 2 dozens just to give them a signal like you're more special than others. Or someone would say, you know what, is the seventh game of the NBA Finals tonight? Where are you watching it? So I'm watching it at home. Let's watch it together. Sure. What fight should we take? What do you mean? Let's watch it live. And then I told this person, it's in Chicago. So I got to find the flight. And I ended up calling the travel agency, and there were no commercial flights. So I had to resort to looking for a chartered jet to fly us to Chicago for us the seventh game, because that was the height of Michael Jordan's popularity. And I said, okay, and then we'll fly back on a commercial on Monday. Benedict, I'm sorry, but I have to be back on Sunday night. What do you mean? Because I have a morning meeting at 7:30, and I want to be rested. I want to be sleeping in my own bed on Sunday night. So I had to find a round trip chartered jet, New York, Chicago, back to New York on the same night, on probably the most expensive night to travel. But the next day, the trade hurt. Oh, I shouldn't be mentioning genders, but this person's trader sent us a lot of business, like and probably 10 times more than the cost of the chartered jet. So that was the game in Wall Street. These are large investment firms holding money for pensioners, individuals, or maybe retirement funds, but they acted that it was their own money, and Wall Street obliged and would say, as long as you give us tit for tat commissions, everything's game. We would bring people to Mykonos, Ibiza, and say that we will have a idea sharing event. So basically, we would say, hey, we pick and choose which clients who could probably pay for this trip, quote unquote trip, and we'll go to Ibiza, we'll go to Saint-Tropez, and when we get back, the orders come in, and it's worth a lot more, like 10 times, a multiple of how much the whole thing cost. So that was the game in Wall Street until the financial crisis, and
In 2008?
2008.
Yep.
But I moved I moved to the U.S. in 1992. Became a managing director in 1995, and moved from one big European bank to another as a managing director. And I think even in one of my jobs, I had a travel and entertainment budget of $250,000 a year, and technically it was really for entertainment. So no holds bar, like anything. Things that anything you can imagine was fair game, as long as the person or the institution will pay you back. So
Amazing.
that was, if you've seen the movie The Wolf of Wall Street,
Yep.
99% of that movie was accurate.
Fascinating. And BeeWee, you're married through this time?
I got married in 1995 with the same girlfriend that flew with me, it was just normal for people in our industry to be out entertaining clients every night. My daughter was born in 1998, Christmas Day. And I remember a week later, I was even telling my wife, We got to move to a bigger apartment. This is too small for us now because of the our little one. And I even dragged my wife, who just gave birth a week ago, to look at apartments. So yeah, I was married then, but you know, that it was just all ego then in Wall Street. It's all about what car you drive. The questions you would hear, the first three questions you would be asked at a cocktail party, Harv, would be, where did you go to school? Oh, who do you work for? Because that triangulates right away if this person is worth talking to, and
Yep.
asking the second question. And second question is, where do your kids go to school? It again further
Yep.
triangulates how this person is in the strata of society. And the third question is like, where do you summer? And again, that tells you exactly what people were looking for when they had conversations in a cocktail party. They would never even ask you where you're from, what do you do, but what you have, and what access do you have that could help me. That was the world in New York and finance, and from the 90s till the bubble burst in 2008.
And BeeWee, from the outside, it looked like the bubble burst, but it looks like it's healed very, very quickly. Has it changed?
So in terms of regulations, they made it more difficult for people to pay a broker without showing proof that there was actual value that was added to the investment firm. And so now it's now like ticking the boxes. Now when you take out clients, it's all Dutch Street. You pay for it because it doesn't make sense. I ended up joining a hard to get into country club purely to entertain clients. I bought a car. I mean, no one really owns a car in New York, but I bought a car purely for my weekend golf outings with my clients. And when the bubble burst, it was frowned upon to be playing golf on a Friday afternoon. And so most people quit their country clubs, didn't own a car, or they would just do their own thing because they didn't have to entertain clients because you can't entertain clients anymore. So on the surface, it may look that people still lived glamorous lives, but it was more like you pay for your own expenses, I pay for my own. But obviously, a lot of wealth was generated during those days. Basically, the model was most of these banks would borrow money from the Japanese postal system, and the Japanese savings rate for a long, long time was like negative. So they would rather give it to the Morgan Stanleys and the Goldman Sachs. And if this Mr. or Mrs. Watanabe was the proverbial name that we would use,
Right.
make 1% of their money, they're happy. And so the banks would use all this Japanese money and lend it to hedge funds. And the hedge funds could then leverage it 5 to 10 times. So you can just imagine the initially virtuous cycle of money that was created using leverage. And that was unwound through the crisis. And so, and we're now in the opposite environment as we speak.
So, BeeWee, what got you out of that game?
It was basically a life or death situation, Harv. Even after the crisis in 2008, I truly thought that I was invincible. It's not coincidental that I probably went through a divorce about the same time at the peak of the just before the financial crisis, because I thought that maybe if this is what I'm making, I can extrapolate this is what I'll be making in 5 years' time. So That's okay if I get divorced. And New York's probably the worst place to get divorced. It's 50-50, no fault. And you have to pay a formulaic alimony. I decided, you know what, well, there was another reason. Unfortunately, my ex-wife suffered from postpartum depression, and was not treated for it. Was in denial for a long, long time, and so it was parallel things happening in my life. I thought I was the doing so well financially, and I could get another job, and she was going through hell with her postpartum depression. She did not want any treatment, and she felt that it was my problem, that I was the one that was who needed therapy, not her. But in reality, we both needed therapy, and I ended up using going out with clients as my therapy because I was not finding the love that I needed back home. Because you won't believe this, like my daughter would be asleep by the time I would get home, and I would ask my wife then, "What's for dinner?" And she goes, "We've already eaten. Make yourself your own dinner." And so that basically made it more advantageous for me just to continue going out with clients, because what's for dinner at home? So that drove us apart, and unfortunately, my ex-wife did not undergo any treatment, and I think it was about my daughter was about 6 months old when I decided I'm going to sleep in the other room, because I just felt depressed living in the same room as a depressed person. So my daughter grew up thinking that it's normal to have parents living in separate bedrooms, because I just felt like I'm happier in a small guest room than with in a bigger bedroom with a unhappy person. So I mean, I can even be honest that we probably only had one intimate moment from 2000 to 2008, and it's what we call Armageddon sex. Literally right after 9/11, everyone thought the world's falling apart.
Right.
That was the only time my wife and I had sex in those final 8 years of our marriage. So that's basically what got me into spending more time out and thinking, I can move on, and I truly tried. One moment that really hit me was I remember saying to myself, let's try, marriage counseling, and we would go, and I would not have even a iota of a second, because she would just nonstop complain about me. And I said, this therapy is not working because she keeps on blaming me. And I remember giving her a book about how to rekindle a relationship. And a week later, I see it in the trash can. And that's when that hit me. This is unsalvaged. I can't salvage this marriage anymore. And that's when I decided to ask for a divorce. But we did this very adult-like. Thank God I had the resources then to have 3 different therapies. One for myself, one for my ex-wife, and actually 3 for my daughter. 3 different therapies. Like one was called cognitive behavior, another one was play therapy, and the third one was more a psychiatric therapist. And the conclusion that all the therapists gave us was, you don't overtly fight. The problem is that you both don't fight. Your daughter has not seen any friction between the two of you, but it's obvious that you don't love each other anymore. And so we had to feign for a year, Harv, little disagreements. This was all staged. For a year, we would get notes from our therapist and say, okay, watch a movie, and after the movie, have dinner, and over dinner, you ask each other, what did you like about the movie or what you didn't like about the movie, and we will purposely say, I liked this part, and she will say, interesting, I did not like that part. And so, in front of our daughter, she would gradually see that these two individuals actually do love each other, but are just so different from each other. So for 1 year, we did this, and in a graduated fashion, that to the point that my daughter could see that, yeah, they're two different people. They shouldn't be living together, and that's when I moved out. But that was still very painful because, you know, again, it was really hard because we were not overtly, we never had a fight. Even we never raised our voice. So it was harder for our daughter to understand what's happening. Was it me that caused this separation? And that's typically what happens with divorces. The kids think that they are the cause of the divorce, and so that was a very trying time. And that was also the same time that I was probably hanging out with the wrong people who were also probably going through what I was going through. But as you know, misery loves company, and I was with people who had done well financially, but were not happy with their respective marriages.
Did you like yourself at that stage, BeeWee?
On the surface, I felt like I was always the center of attention. Uh, I look back 14 years now on, and I realized that there was a reason why I thought I was the center of attention, because I was the only person who would always end up buying bottles of champagne at the nightclubs, having people over and opening bottles of champagne in my apartment. So I felt like, wow, I'm Mr. Popular. But in reality, I was being used. But it took me a long time to realize that these were really not my friends, but people who were practically just using me for my financial wealth.
And you were using them too, BeeWee.
Sorry?
You were using them too,
Yeah, exactly.
like the renter crowd.
Yep. So I thought I was, I mean, if you look at my Facebook album, Harv, you'll see. I mean, I'm not taking any photographs of my Facebook profile and albums so that I can get reminded of where I was in in that particular period of my life, and I can, understand that I shouldn't be going back to that lifestyle again. But people still think that I still have that lifestyle purely because of for several years that's all they saw in my Facebook pages, just me and a bunch of women in their 20s. And so I thought I was like the most popular guy, but when finally the last job I had in Wall Street, the company decided to shut down our business. And that's when I realized, you know what, I need to get out of this rat race. I suffered from a heart attack in 2013, purely because of my lifestyle, late nights, and we had to be in the office by 6:30 in the morning. So you can just imagine that you needed uppers and downers to get you through a week of partying and working hard. And I started feeling chest pains in 2013, and 2 weeks later, I had a full-blown heart attack. Thank God, someone I met completely coincidentally a few months ago. I don't know. This is like an interesting story. Like I was really depressed in 2013 because I had ended a 4-year relationship with someone who I felt like I really took care of. But her brother passed away from a horrible car accident. And this was the first real concrete experience of racism, Harv. She comes from the south of the United States, tall, blonde, blue-eyed woman in their late 20s, and her brother passes away. I'm supposed to fly down to for the funeral, and I was told by her mom that I couldn't come down. And I said, why? Because we come from a little town. You're going to be the topic of conversation rather than our dead son. I said, but what topic of conversation? I don't have to dwell into it, but please do not come. And I said, no, I'm coming. I mean, I've been with your daughter for 4 years, and I've taken care of her. And I was with her when when she found out the news that her brother died, and I've helped her through her career and everything. And I'm sorry, you can't. And her friends had to even convince me, BeeWee, you're not invited. Please don't show up. And that was the start of my depression. In 2013, I said, why would a family do this to me? Why would this woman do this to me? Someone who I helped in terms of career, mentoring and everything. And just because.
Did you love her?
No, I loved her. I mean, I truly thought that I would probably get married again, and I would marry her. But I was not allowed, and God knows why. Maybe because of the color of my skin or the age gap. What the worst part here was in 2013, we broke up, but she was still texting me, and she basically said that it's beyond my control. I said, no, you're an adult. You're an adult. You can make your own decisions. And we ended up getting back together for a few weeks, which probably made my depression deeper because after the few weeks, her mom found out that we were reconnecting again. And from what I gathered from her friends, her family basically gave her the ultimatum that if you continue seeing BeeWee, we're going to disown you and you're not going to inherit anything. And she started ghosting me. And that's when I really felt depressed that, wow, she's not even replying to any of my text messages. And, that's when the first and last time I got into antidepressants. I remember, this is a horrible system in America. You see what you call a psychopharmacologist, someone who doesn't even ask you a single question about what you're going through. You just talk, and after an hour, they give you a prescription. And you go to the pharmacy, take the antidepressant, come back in 2 weeks' time, give you another prescription. They don't even say a single word. And I remember that was probably the lowest point in my life when I was on that antidepressant. Because I remember, I worked in a very high glass office tower, and the best feeling I could sense was like, wow, what feeling would I be experiencing if I hit that pavement from here? And I felt like, oh my gosh, that's the best feeling I can think of. Mm-hmm. So, I had suicidal thoughts. After 2 weeks of being on this particular antidepressant, I said, I'm going to throw it away. I'm going to try what my mom's been telling me, meditation, yoga. And one weekend, my guy friends were saying, BeeWee, you can't just perpetually just be hiding. I said, no, I'm not hiding. I'm starting to get into meditation and yoga. But one evening, they ended up asking me, BeeWee, come on with us. I mean, we used to go out so often and have fun in nightclubs. Just go out for dinner with us, and after dinner, you can go home. So I acceded and said, okay, I'll join you for dinner. And after dinner, arm twisting, I ended up going to a club, and there was a line. I said, you know what? I'm not going to do what I used to do, go in front of the line and pay the bouncer money or say, I'll pay for a table and pay $2,000 to get a table. I just said, you know what? I'm not going to do that. But after 5 minutes of waiting in this line full of people, like I said, and I'm not gonna meet any meaningful person in this line. I did an Irish goodbye. I just turned around, went down, hailed a cab. Cab stops. A woman comes out. I make eye contact with this woman, Harv. I don't know what got into me. I basically said, "I'm going wherever you're going," and she took my arm and she said, "I'm going wherever you're taking me." So we were together for a few months, and she was the woman who, on the day of my heart attack, was actually traveling, but had a sense that there was something wrong with me, and said, "I'm in Atlanta, but I'm gonna fly to New York before flying to the West Coast because I feel like you're not feeling well." I said, "Yeah, I'm not feeling well, but I'm probably gonna be asleep by the time you get here. It's okay. I'm gonna still see you." She was 18th on standby, and she made it on the flight from Atlanta to New York. She landed late at night, and I was really just feeling weird, because I had chest pains already. And around 4:35 in the morning, and she's normally a very heavy sleeper, she woke up and said, she calls me Benedict. "Benedict, what's wrong with you?" And then I woke up, and that's when I experienced the sensation of an elephant standing on my chest. I was having a full-blown heart attack. And so if she wasn't there, I wouldn't be here doing this podcast with you, Harv. Thank God she's a businesswoman. She owned her own business. She asked me for three things. Number one, where's your insurance card? Number two, give me the number of your next of kin, because she had not really met anyone. And third, where do you keep your underwear? So just in case we would be stuck in the hospital, I would have a few sets of underwear. And she called 911 many times. Finally, thank God I lived where I live in the city. If I lived in the suburbs, I would not have made it to the hospital. And the medics came, and I flatlined in front of the medics. Thank God I was on the stretcher when I flatlined for about 5 minutes. And they took us out of my apartment building. This girl had to even tell the doorman, "Remember my name, remember my face, because I have to get my stuff just in case this person conks out." And she even had to sit in front. No, she couldn't even ride on the ambulance, so they had to get another ambulance to pick her up. But thank God she was there. If not, would not have made it. I would have died in my sleep on December 13, 2013, Friday the 13th.
But here you are.
Yep.
When was the turning point, BeeWee?
That particular day. The turning point was the following morning in the hospital. Thank God I survived the heart attack. They were able to put a stent in my heart. Thank God for someone, a surgeon was able to come at 5:30 in the morning to operate on me. If not, I would not have survived. So this is interesting because it was the girl I was seeing then, my wife, and my daughter in the hospital when I woke up. That was interesting because but what the turning point was what my ex-wife told me that the following morning on December 14. She said, "BeeWee, the only thing you can promise yourself is this. Number one, be healthy enough and alive to help your daughter go through the complicated college application process in America. And number two, be alive to walk your daughter down the aisle." Or that was the turning point. That's when I decided I can't continue with this lifestyle, and I had to turn my life around and realize that I'm done with doing and having, and I have to start being.
And how long did that take?
Well, so I got out of Wall Street literally about the same time, and I said, I'll use all my knowledge in financial services to find a way um, to help society. Because after telling you all the stories I've told you about the excesses and the the malevolent um, uh, philosophies of like Wall Street companies and banks, I said I wanted to do something that will actually disrupt financial services and let people who were unbankable or underbanked have access to credit. And so I joined a startup exactly doing this. This is way, way early in 2015 using data, unstructured data, using Facebook and whatever, and using anonymized data to create a profile of a person and find out if this person's profile has the propensity to handle credit well. So this is way, way ahead of a lot of other banks, and I got into this. I worked for this fintech company for 3 years, and unfortunately, the person that I worked with was actually one of my best friends, and he was also a client of mine initially. We decided to do this together, but I didn't realize that certain people just can't really run companies. They might be visionaries, but they can't execute. And I practically hired more than half of the people in the company, but he kept on firing them. He looked at he was a hedge fund manager getting into fintech. And when you're in a hedge fund, you're always long something and short on something to hedge it. And so he saw people as a long and a short as well.
Right.
So he would say, you know what, I got to short this person and we got to go long this other person.
Right.
And so that's exactly what I was doing. I was hiring, firing, hiring, firing. And the biggest investors basically said, this is insane. Why do you keep on hiring and firing good people? And so he got fired as a CEO. And we brought in a professional CEO, but he found a way. My friend found a way to get the CEO fired so he can get his job back. Well, it was a bad vicious cycle, and I decided, you know what, I'd rather be unemployed than work for this person. And more than half of the people knew that I was about to leave, and they said, "BeeWee, we're gonna quit if you quit. We're the reason why we're here, and if you quit, we're gonna quit." And I said, "Please, can you at least wait? My daughter's graduating, and I promised her a trip to South Africa for her graduation. And can you please, if ever resign when you looked at the flight status of our flight to South Africa, and we're on cruising altitude." And that's what they did. Half of the company sent their resignation letters as soon as they saw that our flight was airborne, and they didn't send it to my friend. They sent it to the principal investor. And I'm still very close to a lot of the people in the company, but unfortunately, that's when I decided, I can't be with people who don't have the same values as system as I do. The problem with that chapter in my life was everyone was about keeping up with the Jonases, keeping up with appearances. As I mentioned, I mean, it's all about like where your kids go to school, what country club you belong to, what car you drive, where do you summer. That was like completely out of my system by then, and that's when I truly re-engineered my life and started getting to know real souls and not people with access to capital or access to a nightclub or a house in Ibiza, whatever.
So, BeeWee, for the Edmund Hillary Fellowship, how did you come across that?
So during the height of the lockdown, just before that, one of my best friends got into a program called Atlas Project. It's a life transformational program. And he said, BeeWee, I see what you're going through in life. And I think I'm going to enroll you in it. And I said, what? You're paying a $3,000 enrollment fee? Yeah, because someone paid for me to undergo this training, and it's helped me, and I'm paying it forward. So I went through this program called Atlas Project, where you have 3 different weekends. The first part is Explore, where you go back into your past, see your biases, your blockages, your blind spots, and what are your triggers. And that's all we did one whole weekend, and that was painful. Just seeing, oh my gosh, that's the yucky part of my life, and that's why I'm here. And the second weekend was called Explore. I forgot the name now, but it was basically the weekend you discover your full potential, that you're only operating X% of your full potential. And that's when you declare, what the fuck, do whatever it takes. And that's the weekend you tell yourself, I'm here for a purpose, and I gotta live a life of purpose. And then from there, we undergo free life coaches for the rest of our lives, to redesign our. Oh, sorry, that's it. Explore, and then redesigning. We went through 3 redesigning weekends where they truly break you down and understand your weaknesses, and understand your strength, and understand how you're able to seek assistance to with your blind spots, and also fully maximize your God-given assets or talents. And so that's what I went through just before COVID. And one of the things I promised myself was, I've been away from the Philippines for about 20 plus years then, and I haven't really spent time with my mother. My dad passed away when I was in the U.S., and I just said, you know what, I gotta be with my mom before she passes on. And I committed to quitting a job, and just surprising my mom on my birthday. And my brothers were already all set in organizing a party where my mom would show up at dinner, and then my mom would just show up, and I'll be reading a newspaper, and she will say, who's that reading a newspaper there? And I'll just put the newspaper down and say, it's BeeWee. And just surprise her and tell her I'm spending the next 6 months in the Philippines. However, that never happened because of the lockdown. So that was my biggest regret in my life. My mom would tell me every year, BeeWee, I'm paying for you to take a break from your life. I'll pay for your trip to India and come with me to Mount Abu and just spend time being. Stop. You're done doing and having. Start being. Unfortunately, I never got to see her again. She died alone during COVID. We're at the height of the lockdown, so not even not a single sibling or relative of ours could be with her in the ICU. And that was what really hit me, that I needed to really do something that will be a tribute to my mom, who was, as I mentioned, lived a vegan life, and also leave a legacy to my daughter, who also happens to be vegan. So that was the trigger. And my younger brother, Miko, had already been accepted into the Edmund Hillary Fellowship, and he was telling me about what the fellowship was all about. And I said, that sounds like exactly the type of people I would like to be with. But I looked at the people who were accepted, not a single person from Wall Street. I said, I have no chance. I'm tainted. But lo and behold, I got in, and I truly believe that. That's why I truly believe in what you call, in the concept of redemption. That people are given the hardest. People are given difficult situations to learn from, and to find a way to find their best version of themselves. And that's where I'm at now, Harv. I'm trying to find the best version of BeeWee. No longer the most popular version of BeeWee.
Nice distinction. Why did the fellowship let you in?
Um, my sense is a couple of things. I mean, I was truly going through a transformational stage, and they could see it through the Zoom calls. And at the same time, during the lockdown, Harv, I was blessed to have had my 21-year-old then daughter with me during the lockdown, and I just felt so bad for all these Gen Zs because they're not like the millennials who feel entitled because they were the kids of the entitled baby boomers. But the Gen Zs were the kids who witnessed 9/11 when they were entering kindergarten, 2008 financial crisis when their parents were probably going through what I was going through. Money was flowing, bad divorces, and then going through a pandemic, and seeing the deterioration of the environment and the overconsumption, overbuilding, overindulging of society. And having conversations with my daughter during the lockdown, and she wasn't even hopeful. She just felt like, you know what, we're just gonna live our lives in a horrible planet, and it's gonna just get worse. She even told me, "Daddy, how important is your bloodline?" I said, "What do you mean by that?" Because I don't want to have a kid in this planet. So if it's not important to you, I'm telling you right now, I'm not gonna have a kid because I cannot bring another soul into this planet. And that really hit me. And I said, from my training in Atlas Project, I sat down with her and said, you know what? Let's do something about it. Let's not finger point or engage in the blame game, but let's get it done. So I ended up having my own mantra that I created when I was undergoing my life transformation at Atlas Project, and it goes like this: let go, wake up, let's go. Basically, let go of the past, wake up in the moment, and let's go make a difference to this planet and to society. And that's the first thing I say to myself every morning I wake up. I truly believe I'm here for a reason. I've I forgot to mention to you that in 2019, just before I entered Atlas Project, I was a victim of a violent assault outside my apartment, where someone who had road rage basically felt that I was jaywalking and took it out on me. Followed me, didn't even park his car, followed me and punched me. And I had traumatic brain injuries in October 2019. So this is just before the pandemic. So, the timing of the assault and my friend enrolling me in this Atlas project and my mom passing on and being with my daughter during lockdown made me realize I need to do something that I can leave as a legacy to my children, to my daughter and my friends' kids' generation. And my daughter's being vegan and my mom being was also vegan. We started thinking about food deserts and how do you eliminate food deserts in the United States? It's by making fresh produce cheaper, affordable, available, and all year round. And so I started reading more about robotic farming and what you call controlled environment agriculture. And that resonated with my daughter, that if we can find a way to produce organic leafy greens and make them cheaper than a burger, you know what happens. The large burger companies like McDonald's, Burger King, they basically produce a burger cheaper than a salad. So, and they purposely put their branches in poor neighborhoods all over the world. And so people, well, will end up growing up eating burgers because it's cheaper than having a salad. So, so my daughter wrote a piece, thesis on food elimination of food deserts, and that was the genesis of my involvement in controlled environment agriculture. And so we sat down during the pandemic. She taught me everything about food security, about food deserts, and toxic runoffs caused by traditional farming methods. And I taught her pro forma financials, and we put together investor deck. It was for fun initially, just like us making TikTok dances during the lockdown. But we manifested that we will create this. And I got to meet a lot of people who were involved in this. And I met this person who was starting a company, who had started a proof of concept for organic leafy greens, but the pandemic hit, and he's now become one of my best friends, and he's the founder of a company called Water Garden Organics, and we've since then we've raised enough money, and we're now building our first large-scale facility in West Virginia. We're purposely targeting states where they were mostly affected by the elimination of fossil fuel industries like coal or fracking. So we decided to have our first one in West Virginia. It's still close to an interstate where trucks can easily pick up the organic leafy green. No human touches from seeding all the way to palleting. And I think that was what got the fellowship interested in me, that I was doing something completely unrelated to my field, because I truly believe that this is going to make a difference to billions of people. I never really heard the word or the term regenerative agriculture till I got here. And the more I learned about the regenerative agriculture, that's when I realized that they actually go hand in hand. You do need to regenerate farmlands or grazing lands, but at the same time, you need to have produce to feed the people. You've seen, climate issues happening even the last few months in places like California, where they initially had droughts, then floods. Even in New Zealand, I mean, the floods we've seen over the last 2 months. This is going to get worse, and the impact's going to be on food supply. So for me, I found my why finally, Harv. This is my why. This is the purpose I was brought into this world. This is the reason why I survived a heart attack, why I've survived a traumatic brain injury. Is truly to help produce enough food, vegetables for people.
It's quite a story, BeeWee. It's quite a story.
And
And I'm pleased we got to some good news at the end, you know, because I was thinking about you went through a big, long period in your life where there wasn't a lot of good news.
Yes. But I thought, that was just, it's easy to numb yourself with the bad news when you get into certain medication. So, America is all about like medication. And one thing I do love about New Zealand is like, they truly believe in like medication is not the answer. I mean, it's about going through mental health therapy before you are medicated. And that's one thing I'm looking forward to, being in a society where it's not just, here, take this pill. This is the panacea for your sickness. But in reality, it just numbs and dumbs down your feelings, and you waste, you lose your purpose, and that's the last thing I want, Harv. I'm now found my purpose in life, and I'm focused on not only this water garden organics, but also mentoring people who truly believe in creating something positive to society and the planet.
And BeeWee, you're hoping to get citizenship through the fellowship is I was going to say a big part of it, but part of the program, so that we bring and have this brain gain into New Zealand.
Well, so I think what Edmund Hillary Fellowship has done properly is they truly are able to weed out people who are just gaming the system, who are just purely looking for a way to get a permanent residency or citizenship in New Zealand. This fellowship is truly about contributing and to the efforts of your cohorts, and I would, my dream is to be able to help people in New Zealand create the best version of themselves, and in the process, also being part of the society. So it comes hand in hand, and I can't think of a better way to enter a new society than this fellowship. In a way, I've divided my life into three. My first 30 years was I was focused on learning. The second 30 years of my life was earning, and now I'm returning. I'm returning everything that I've learned and I've earned back to society and the planet.
I love your conviction, BeeWee, and that's something that's come out all the way through, is that when you put your mind to something, it's happened.
What the fuck? Do whatever it takes.
Yes.
That's exactly like I'm not gonna say if it's something I know that's gonna be beneficial to society and the planet. I'll do whatever it takes.
I can see the determination in your face right now.
Let go, wake up, let's go.
Love it, BeeWee. You know what? This has been. I was looking forward to this, and you haven't. You've been fabulous interview. BeeWee, we wrote down two things, two topics. I'm just going to finish on these.
Mm-hmm.
Two things that are dear to you is redemption and transformation.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us about redemption. What does that mean to you?
Well, people make mistakes. Society seems to, the shortcut. Same with medication is like the industrialized prison complex. You do something, in America for a long, long time. If you're caught with marijuana, you get imprisoned, and who benefits from it? Not society. It's the people who run the industrialized prison complexes. And I truly believe that even the person who actually assaulted me, I told the Attorney General, a District Attorney General, that I'd rather he go through anger management than spend a day in prison. And said, wow, that's pretty interesting that you're mentioning this. And at least New York's a progressive state. And they said, you know what, we might recommend this instead of having him in a prison. And they said, yeah, we're going to give him 10 hours of prison. I said, nope, I'm not going to allow it. At least 40 hours of anger management. I said, well, we've never really done this, but, we're going to try it. And the assistant district attorney mentioned, yeah, we're going to give him 40 hours of anger management instead of putting him in prison. And so I truly believe that I hope that this person realizes that he has, a life to look forward to, and hopefully he'll find the right path to find the best version of himself. The other reason I mentioned this is because my partner in this Water Garden Organics actually was also is going through a redeeming part of his life. If you remember the book Bonfire of the Vanities in the 80s, he, along with another person by the name of Michael Milken, were the two people that then Attorney General Rudy Giuliani used as the examples of like people in Wall Street committing illegal acts. And so my business partner was, and along with Michael Milken, who now runs an institute, were both imprisoned for illegal inside information. And so, and now we're building this um, venture in organic leafy greens, and he openly talks about what he's gone through. He's been teaching financial ethics in universities, and I can truly see in his heart that that he's found a new life, and he could have easily been disregarded. I leave a note in my bag, like one of the exercises we had in the Atlas project was to walk around in a field and just look for an object, and I found like a half burnt charcoal, and I picked it up, and later on they said, "Why did you pick it up? There has to be a reason," and that's how I felt as well. Like this half burnt charcoal could still light the fire, and so I picked it up, and I still have that little burnt charcoal that I carry as a reminder to myself that even though it is a disregarded burnt wood, it can still light a fire.
Mm.
And so I truly believe in redemption and a way to redeem whatever things that you did in the past. And as long as you end your life with being a positive contributor to society, and you truly have done what you think is the best thing, be the best version of yourself, then you've lived the best life you could ever live.
BeeWee, how would your mother feel now about the work you're doing?
My mother, I'm closer to my mother now than ever. The best analogy I can use is like the North and the South Island. It might be separated, they might be separated on the surface, but very connected in the deep. And that's how I see my relationship with my mother since she passed on. I truly see her guiding me through this transformation that I'm undergoing. And I truly think that she's guiding me almost every day through all the pitfalls that I might go through and all the successes that I might have. She's more than ever grounding me. That just try to be the best version of yourself, and stop. Forget about having and doing. It was really hard just getting out of the rat race and stop keeping up with the Jonases, because that's just the way you're ingrained in Manhattan, New York. And I'm really excited to gradually, as I'm able to spend my life in another part of the world and live in Aotearoa.
BeeWee, that's a great place, I think, to round this podcast up. I think that's welcome to New Zealand, welcome to Aotearoa. And it has been fabulous to meet you through the fellowship, and I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for being so open, BeeWee, and being so descriptive and giving us a view into this life of Wall Street that we've only seen through TV most of the time. And I've really enjoyed this conversation.
And Harv, I'm very grateful for the fellowship and getting to meet amazing souls like you. And I'm just really blessed. I feel blessed to be where I am at this exact moment in my life, having this podcast with you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening in. We're Collective Intelligence, a one-of-a-kind people ecosystem that takes inspiration from Mother Nature. To find out how we reimagine leadership development, visit our website www.collectiveintelligence.co.nz.